Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. We're going to dive a bit deeper into breaking the habit of worrying today. And we'll start with a meditation.
So sitting comfortably, just beginning with a nice big deep breath, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. So eyes open, a soft focus. As you breathe out, you can allow the breath to return to its natural rhythm. But just keep the eyes open for a moment. Just focusing in on one particular object within your field of vision. Not staring at it too intently, still aware of the space around you. But just gently focusing on that one object. And then just slowly zooming back out again as you blink a few times with the eyes.
All right, short and sweet. So we'll do a check-in today. Try to focus on how you're feeling today. There's been a lot of change this week. Do you feel like you're adapting well? Are you having some trouble? How does your body feel? How does your mind feel? What's taking up most of your headspace? What is your worry, right? As we talk about worries, what's in your head? What's going on? When did you last eat a whole meal, right? The schedule is different. Did it throw things off for you? Have you adjusted already? Are you tired, right? Hopefully all of you are making an effort to join us for advisory, even though it's at 8:30. And the idea is that this has become so beneficial for you that you just can't live without us, and that you are joining us every day at 8:30 if you're home, which might make you tired, right? So check in on that. And then what will you do today that will bring you some joy, right? Remember, find something small, right? You deserve 30 seconds of joy. You deserve more, but you deserve at the very least 30 seconds of joy, right?
So as was promised on our Tuesday video, we are going to be building on understanding anxiety as a habit. And again, just to reinforce, there's a lot of ways and a lot of frameworks of understanding anxiety and worry. And how I want to introduce this again to you, building on Tuesday's video, is that we can think about anxiety as a behavior that can also become habitual, that we can turn into a habit. And so this is really understanding, what does that cycle look like? How can you personalize it to your own experience? Even if you don't have full-blown anxiety, what are the worries that you tend to get stuck in, right? Those thoughts that are kind of magnetic, where when they pop in, they just stick to you and you can't get them out, right? And so then you end up thinking about them over and over and over again, right? And that's that rumination piece. So this is just building on that concept. Anxiety at its core is essentially about uncertainty. It's when your brain and body code something in your head or in your surroundings as, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I don't like that, right? Your brain does not like not knowing the answer. And so when that happens and your brain gets the signal of, uh-oh, uncertainty, we got to do something, it kicks in that part of your brain that's really good at worrying. And essentially it's trying to get more information. It's searching for, how are we going to get more information? And sometimes there isn't more information, because a lot of life, there just isn't perfect answers. Most of it, actually, probably 99% of it, there isn't a perfect answer, and we're operating in the gray, and that's just how it is. Right, but that's not acceptable for your brain. Your brain is there to keep you safe. And so it's trying to kick in that part of you that knows how to worry / ruminate / go over it in your head a million times. And maybe there's actually some problem solving in there, but probably not. Right, so that's kind of the cycle of what happens. It feels better to worry than to not worry, right? If you are, I hear this from this was the example when I was reading about this, of if you're a parent and your child is going out driving for the first time and you worried from the moment they left to the moment they come home, it felt better than to not worry, right? Because you were worried about how that was going to go for them. Or your child's first day of school, or I'm trying to think of a student example of a test coming up, right? It feels better to worry about how it's going to go than to not. Even if you intellectually and cognitively understand that worrying isn't doing anything, it's not actually giving you an answer or problem solving in any meaningful way. So what happens here is that we're essentially revving the brain's worrying engines. We keep pressing on the gas pedal, we're revving it, but we're not actually moving forward. We're not actually making meaningful progress in terms of finding an answer. And in doing that, we're actually making it harder for our brain to clearly think and problem solve. So we're undermining our brain's ability to come up with real tangible answers, even if that answer is learning to live with uncertainty. It makes it harder for our brain to come up with something more realistic, more clear, as opposed to this kind of explosive, just, this kind of explosion of worrying that's doesn't have a direction and doesn't have an intentionality and doesn't have an answer.
Can I just jump in for a second? This reminds me of something we talked about a few times, and that is it's that uncertainty piece, right? Because your brain is programmed to keep you alive, right? That is job number one. And anytime there's no clear definitive answer, your brain goes, what is happening? I can't cope. I can't deal with this. So in learning these strategies, you're teaching your brain, right? You're literally physiologically changing the wiring of your brain to adapt to uncertainty, right? And an interesting piece that could feel really counterintuitive, but if you are worried because you don't know the grade of your test, right? You took a test and you know for the next 3 days, you're just going to worry constantly until that grade comes in. You're in this constant state of worry. Now, 3 days from now, you get that grade and that grade is a big fat F. Your brain will still feel better. Even though that's not what you were hoping for, even though you're now going to have to deal with the disappointment, your brain goes, whew, I have an answer. My job with worrying is complete. I worried this to the end. And the end is an F, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm the brain. It doesn't matter. I have an answer. So it's really interesting because you literally have to retrain your brain. It's that distress tolerance piece that we talked about a lot, right? It's things are going to be uncomfortable. How do we cope with being uncomfortable without getting stuck in the cycle? That's it for me.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's easier. It feels good to just feel like there is some answer and we know where to point our finger and who to blame. And, it's like the answer is more important, even if it's not a good answer, than not knowing. And what happens is that when we're going in that cycle of rumination and we're in the uncertainty and we think we're doing something by ruminating, even though it's not actually doing anything, our brain learns the association. It learns, uncertainty, I'm going to ruminate for 20 minutes by association, even if it's not doing anything. This is what feels good. And you actually, when the author of this book was kind of reviewing the research on this, you actually see the dopamine, which is kind of the feel good hormone levels go up in the brain because people feel good worrying. They feel like they're doing something and they're essentially mistaken. They're making the mistake of thinking that excitement in your brain, something happening in your brain, is the same thing as problem solving. And it's just not the same thing. So you can see how this is getting positively reinforced as a habit. And that's really the takeaway message here on this slide, is that when this starts to get positively reinforced, it becomes automatic for your body and brain to react in a certain way. And anxiety, rumination then become habituated. They become automatic. And then it takes a more thoughtful mindfulness around seeing these patterns to be able to break them. So this is something we're going to be building on a lot. And in subsequent videos, we're going to talk about how to undo that cycle, how to unlearn that automatic process. And, spoiler alert, the key really is that mindfulness piece. And it's unlearning it at a physiological, somatic, meaning body, at that physiological level. How does it feel? It's not thinking your way out of it. It's not using more thoughts to unlearn it. It's learning physically, mindfully, is this helping me? Is this helping me? Right? When I'm worrying about whether I got that F, is this helpful? Is this feel good? right? And then that's going to reduce whether or not it's positively reinforced, because your brain is like, oh yeah, wait a second, it actually doesn't feel good. It's not even helping me and it doesn't feel good, right? But it has to learn that in your body. It has to get that mind body signal from you first. So we're going to talk more about that, but for now, we just want you to really understand the concept of how anxiety becomes a habit.
So we have just a quick example for you, but before I go into this, I really like it, in my head, if I feel like I can sum something up in a quick example, then I get it. And so before we filmed this, I said, Mary, is this kind of how this is? And she said, yes. So I'll share it with you. The interesting thing about the brain is it's so complex, but it's also so simple, right? It's like code, like this happens and this happens, and A then B, and this is always the truth, right? So the example that I came up with for my own self was if my car is broken, based on this information, and it's true and valid, my brain does not know the difference between I must worry about my car being broken and I must get my car fixed. I must problem solve fixing my car. My brain doesn't know the difference, because what we've learned through years and years of these maladaptive behaviors is worrying is a thing that I'm doing, right? I'm feeling productive. I'm not helpless. So if I don't know how to get my car fixed, if it's leaking oil and I have no idea what that means, I should just worry about it, because then I'm doing something, right? As opposed to I should go get it fixed, right? So if you have this idle time of like waiting until you can get something done, your brain doesn't like that, right? It says, I have to worry about this thing. I have to. So that kind of helped put things in perspective for me. So here's an example. So let's say the trigger for you is thinking about doing some homework, right? The behavior that you have is worrying, ruminating, obsessing, wondering how you're going to do the homework, wondering if you'll do well, wondering what's the point of doing it, right? You're just sitting there thinking about it a whole lot. The result in the short term is relief, right? Whew, I'm doing something, right? It's not the homework, but I'm doing something. And it's loosely related to the homework, right? At least I've done something. At least I've worried about this, right? But in the long term, your brain learns that if you just sit there and you obsessively obsess about something, you just don't stop thinking about it, that you're going to find the answer, that is the key to the solution. And it's not, okay? It's most definitely not. You know, we've said this before when we talk about studying, if you're stuck, walk away, right? Walk away and do something else. And it's very similar here. So right now, really what we're doing here is trying to help you understand, right? We've talked about this a million times. Step one to making any change is understanding it, right? Understanding, recognizing, accepting that there's something happening. And once you have that insight, you know, that's when the second part comes in. So that's what this activity is about.
So to reinforce becoming more aware of whether this cycle is happening for you, whether that rumination and anxiety is becoming a habit for you, the key is that self-awareness. The key is becoming aware of whether this has happened for you, and then ideally in the moment moving forward, as it's happening, becoming more aware of the pattern as it is unfolding. So in what context does worrying feel good for you, right? So the next time you're sitting there and you've been thinking about something for 5 or 6 minutes and you're going over it in your mind, and what about this, and I should have said that, and I felt so embarrassed, and what does the person think of me, and all of that, right? Notice how it feels physically. So not what do you think about it, not, oh, I'm doing my worrying again, no, I shouldn't be doing this, they said not to do this. Not that, but physically, how does it feel in your body? So it's not a cognitive unlearning. It's not using your cognition, using, you know, the smart brain that you have to undo it. It's using the physiological signals about whether it feels good to just notice how it feels. Now, my guess is it doesn't feel so great, because it doesn't feel good for any of us to sit there and ruminate and have anxiety. It's a terrible feeling physiologically. But what I want you to focus on is really take a second, do a body scan, figure out, are you feeling it in your shoulders? Are you noticing yourself tense up? Are you noticing how your heart is beating? How does your stomach feel? Right? You're really stepping into that physiological experience. And that is going to build the mindfulness around whether it's actually rewarding or not, short-term and long-term. Hopefully, you know, we're going to be building on this, but this is our kind of first step in building that for you. And that's all for today. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.